send my condolences to Lil Man. Nephew, man. We were just on Family Feud together, all of us.
Lil Jon ruled the world until the unthinkable happened. His son vanished. Then he turned up dead. No phone. No shoes. No clear explanation. And now, in the aftermath, certain figures connected to his world are surfacing quietly, offering apologies, and in subtle ways confirming what law enforcement has not publicly stated. The silence surrounding this case is heavy. It feels deliberate. And the more time passes, the less this looks like a simple tragedy. This is not just loss. It is a mystery that refuses to stay buried. A father's worst nightmare unfolding in public view. Anyone who understands Lil Jon's history knows he has been a dominant presence in the industry for decades. He did not just participate in hip-hop. He helped reshape it. The king of crunk, the architect of a movement that shifted the sound of an entire era. His records were loud, aggressive, unforgettable. He built party anthems that still echo through clubs and stadiums worldwide. Not long ago, he stood on one of the largest stages on Earth. Super Bowl 58, halftime, 2024, sharing that moment with Usher. That appearance was not nostalgia. It was proof that his influence remained intact. His career was catching a second wind. New projects were in motion, new collaborations, renewed relevance. Momentum was building again. Everything appeared aligned for another chapter of success. Then, without warning, it stopped. No hit record can protect you from what comes next. No fame can soften it. No wealth can prevent it. His son was gone, and the circumstances surrounding that loss immediately raised more questions than answers. The details did not settle. They did not resolve neatly. They lingered. Before breaking down what happened and why certain aspects refused to make sense, it is important to understand exactly who we are talking about. Nathan Smith, professionally known as DJ Young Slade, was 27 years old. He was the eldest son of rapper and producer Lil Jon and his estranged wife, Nicole Smith.
I even got a tattoo of his signature. It was like something ironic for me because it's like, you know, it's just my dad, but had to get the signature. It was like, yeah.
But reducing him to someone riding on a famous last name would be inaccurate. That narrative does not hold up under scrutiny. Nathan built his own foundation. Born April 30th, 1998, in Decatur, Georgia, in the center of the Atlanta metro area, he grew up immersed in sound. Music was not something he discovered later in life. It surrounded him from the beginning. And that is not exaggeration. As a toddler, before he could fully articulate sentences, he contributed vocals to one of his father's early hits. He sang the hook on Lil Jon and the East Side Boys' 2000 club anthem, Bia Bia. That was not a symbolic cameo. That was participation. He was in the studio before most children learn how to read. As he grew older, that early exposure developed into something more intentional. The interest did not fade, it sharpened. In 2008, when Nathan was around 10 years old, a defining moment occurred at an after-party for the Transworld Skateboarding Awards. He watched his father from the DJ booth, controlling energy, commanding attention, manipulating sound in real time. That scene altered his trajectory. It was no longer just background noise, it was purpose. Lil Jon recognized that shift. He downloaded the Serato app for him. He provided turntables, he offered basic instruction. Then he stepped back and allowed Nathan to experiment on his own.
What up, Will?
And I was talking about the anger management tour. It was like 2004. I was like, what, like 5, 6, something like that.
DJ Young Slade, the son of Lil Jon, has died at 27 years old. Lil Jon confirmed the news in a statement telling us he is extremely heartbroken.
That independence mattered. It forced discipline. By 12 or 13, Nathan had graduated from the Scratch DJ Academy in Los Angeles, one of the youngest students in his class. That detail is often overlooked, but it signals commitment, training, structure. By his early teens, he was not simply practicing, he was working. He spent a year as the touring DJ for then Disney star Zendaya. That role required consistency, professionalism, reliability. He was learning the mechanics of live performance long before most young artists even understand the business side of music. From the outside, it appeared that everything was aligning for him as well, legacy and skill moving in the same direction. But what happened next would fracture that trajectory in a way no one anticipated. As a naturally shy kid, that early exposure to live crowds forced Nathan to grow into himself.
And
Being placed in front of
he brought me
thousands
on
of people
stage,
at
and I
such
was
a
just
young
like, bro, I
age
was so
does
shy,
something
bro. I
to
was a
a
little
person.
kid, whatever.
It
But
either overwhelms you
it's just
or it
crazy to
shapes
have
you.
experiences like
In
that
his
and then
case,
go home
it
and we
shaped
just like
him.
drinking tea, playing video
That
games.
experience pushed him to develop a stage presence that was his own, separate from his father's larger-than-life persona. And if you ever listened closely to the way Nathan spoke about growing up as Lil Jon's son, you could hear it immediately. There was pride in his voice, not celebrity pride, family pride. That bond was real. Nathan literally tattooed his father's signature on his body. Not for publicity, not for branding, for loyalty. Because to the world, Lil Jon was a global icon. But inside that house, he was just dad.
How so?
Like, just not taking care of his artists. He didn't take care of his art. TBT was a great experience because it was a place where I could go and be myself.
That contrast is what made their relationship different. Nathan once spoke about being brought on stage at 5 or 6 years old during one of the biggest tours of that era. Imagine that image clearly. A small child standing beside his father in front of thousands of screaming fans. Lights flashing, speakers shaking, the crowd chanting. And yet, to him, it was just time with his father. That tells you more than any headline ever could. On stage, Lil Jon was explosive, loud, unfiltered energy. Off stage, behind closed doors, it was different.
Where my money at, man? Where my money? Where money?
At home, they were just father and son drinking tea and playing video games. That quiet reality rarely makes it into documentaries. The public sees the wild performer. The family sees the man who takes the headset off and becomes present. That is the version Nathan knew. And that is the version that just experienced the kind of loss no parent prepares for. Nathan continued building his own identity. He graduated from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music, in May 2020. He studied audio engineering and production, not because he needed credentials to lean on his last name, but because he wanted mastery. Education added structure to what he had already lived around his entire life. After graduating, he did not coast. He worked. He co-produced Sweetie's Get It Girl in 2021, a track that found placement on HBO's Insecure and in a Beats headphones commercial. That kind of placement is competitive. It requires precision.
Yeah, it's a lot of most people couldn't deal with this life.
He also worked on Ice Cube's Talking About These Rappers from the 2024 album Man Down. Those credits were not symbolic, they were earned. In March 2025, he appeared on MTV's Family Legacy Season 2, which premiered on Paramount+. That appearance showed another layer of him, connecting legacy with individuality. This was a young man who followed the right sequence: education, experience, discipline, consistency. He was not spiraling publicly. He was not surrounded by visible chaos. From the outside, he was building momentum, making his father proud, quietly expanding his resume. Then February 3rd, 2026 arrived. On that morning, everything shifted. Nathan Smith was reported missing after leaving his home in Milton, Georgia, under circumstances that immediately stood out. Around 6:01 a.m., he left on foot. No phone, no wallet, no shoes, no keys, nothing. Officials later indicated he may have been disoriented and in need of assistance. They added that he might not have been wearing clothes and may have had no belongings with him. That detail alone changes the tone.
I don't like to dwell on any negativity. I like to keep everything positive, find the positivity out of a situation and take that and move on. But
Lil Jon said, "In our last times together, we're comforted in knowing that we expressed that very sentiment to him."
A 27-year-old man does not casually walk out of his house before sunrise with nothing. Something triggered that exit. Something forced urgency. A multi-agency search began immediately. Law enforcement, emergency responders, volunteers. 3 days passed. 3 full days without a confirmed sighting. That kind of gap creates pressure. It creates speculation. And it creates silence inside a family waiting for answers. Then, on February 6th, 2026, at approximately 11:53 a.m., divers with the Cherokee County Fire Department located and recovered a body from a pond at Mayfield Park, near Nathan's Milton residence. The body was believed to be Nathan Smith. It was later confirmed. Just like that, DJ Young Slade was gone at 27. Authorities stated there was no indication of foul play. At the same time, the Milton Police Department's Criminal Investigations Division made it clear the case would remain open and active. That language matters. Open. Active. But beyond that, very little has been shared. No public autopsy findings, no toxicology results, no detailed timeline of his movements between leaving the house and being found in the pond.
Went on record and told the whole world exactly why the group fell apart, and it was ugly.
I was trying to just be kind of political correct. I ain't really want to tell what really happened, but the group broke up because of the money.
There it is.
What remains is a 27-year-old man who left his home under unusual conditions and was discovered in water 3 days later. That is the official narrative, but understanding the weight of the situation requires context. It requires understanding who Lil Jon is, the environment he came from, the enemies he may have accumulated over decades in the industry, and the path he walked to build his empire.
Where the record sales money went.
So I started asking these questions. It was almost everybody's attitude changed. Like everything wasn't the same no more when I started asking all these questions now.
The second Big Sam started asking where his money was.
Because this is not a simple story. And when you examine the full picture, the unanswered spaces begin to feel larger. And along that climb, he made serious enemies. Not casual critics, not online doubters, real adversaries. People who wanted what he had built, people who believed he owed them access, leverage, opportunity, and others who simply felt wronged, whether justified or not. Success at that level never moves quietly. It disrupts hierarchies. It creates resentment. And over time, resentment hardens. Lil Jon, born Jonathan H. Smith on January 17, 1971 in Atlanta, Georgia, did not grow up in chaos. He was raised in Southwest Atlanta as the eldest of 5 children. His father was an aerospace engineer with military experience. Discipline existed in that household. Structure existed. This was not a story of a young man emerging from nothing without guidance. He had a foundation, and he used it. At Frederick Douglass High School, he joined the marching band. He started DJing at 15. Basement parties turned into local buzz. That is how movements begin. Quietly, organically. Word of mouth before algorithms ever existed.
He talked about the dark side of fame in a way that most people do not hear.
No, because they just see the private jets and the trips and all that. They don't realize, sometimes you can't go nowhere because people bugging you.
That is the reality of the life he was living. The private jets and the trips.
After high school, he worked his way into the Atlanta music scene step by step. No shortcuts. Eventually, he secured a position as an A&R executive for Jermaine Dupri's So So Def Recordings. That was not a small role. He rose to executive vice president of A&R and executive produced the So So Def Bass All-Stars compilation series. He was learning the machinery of the industry from the inside. Then, 1995 changed everything. Lil Jon formed Lil Jon and the East Side Boys with Big Sam and Lil Bo.
I gotta ask you, man, our brother, Lil Jon, man.
Yeah, man, I send my condolences to Lil man. Nephew, man. We were just on Family Feud together, all of us.
That decision did not just create a group, it ignited a sound. Crunk was born. Loud, aggressive, hypnotic. The kind of energy that did not politely request attention. It demanded it. Their records were relentless. Clubs could not ignore them. Before long, that sound was dominating the hip-hop landscape. It was physical music. Music that made it impossible to stand still. In 2002, still signed to TVT Records, Kings of Crunk went multi-platinum. 2 years later, Crunk Juice followed the same path.
Me, Lil Jon, his son, Shorty Putt, and Too Short, man, like a few months back.
You guys made history together. I know you have so much love for their family.
As a producer, Lil Jon was everywhere. Usher's Yeah became one of the defining records of the decade and earned a Grammy for Best Rap Sung Performance in 2005. He produced hits for Ciara, the Yin Yang Twins, P.D. Pablo. The list kept expanding. At that moment, he was untouchable. But that level of dominance creates friction, because with success comes division. And the first major conflict did not come from the streets or rival artists. It came from inside the business.
I just send my love and support. You know what I mean? Lil Jon, anything you need that I can provide, I'm here for you. I love you. And you know that, brother. And we're gonna miss nephew.
TVT Records, owned by Steve Gottlieb, was accused by multiple artists, including Lil Jon and Pitbull, of withholding royalties and mismanaging promotions. That is not a minor disagreement. That is structural conflict. When the label that distributes your music becomes the source of dispute, everything shifts. Lil Jon addressed it publicly. He sat down and spoke about the situation. On the surface, his words were controlled, measured, even optimistic. But if you listen closely, there was strain beneath the calm. Frustration does not always scream. Sometimes it tightens. At face value, it sounded like a man who had made peace with a difficult chapter. But keep listening, because the tension reveals itself.
How are you supporting him at a time like this?
I talked to him yesterday, so my condolences goes out to, him and his family, the tragic.
The artist driving massive revenue for an independent label was not being fully supported by that same label. The imbalance was obvious. The machine benefited. The architect felt shorted. And still, Lil Jon chose not to dwell in negativity. That is who he has consistently presented himself to be. Focus forward. Avoid public bitterness. Keep building. But disputes like that do not disappear cleanly. They leave impressions. They create quiet fractures. And over time, those fractures widen into lines of division that people remember. That is Lil Jon's character in a nutshell. Optimistic on the surface, focused forward, refusing to sit in bitterness. But even with that mindset, consequences do not disappear simply because you choose not to dwell on them.
I don't know how that feels, but, I'm sure I know it's devastating for him. So, like I said, my condolences go out to him and his family.
The damage from the TVT situation was already done. The feud with TVT Records stalled his solo album, Crunk Rock, which was originally planned for 2006. Instead, it did not arrive until 2010. 4 full years. In the music industry, 4 years is not a pause. It is a disruption. That delay meant lost momentum, lost revenue, lost cultural positioning. While trends shifted and new artists emerged, one of the architects of an entire movement was trapped in contractual complications tied to a label that was unraveling. In 2008, TVT filed for bankruptcy after losing millions in lawsuits. The collapse left artists like Lil Jon suspended in uncertainty, contracts tangled, payments disputed, projects frozen. That kind of instability creates tension far beyond paperwork. It strains relationships, it breeds suspicion, and it leaves artists questioning who was truly protecting their interests. But the label dispute was not the only fracture. The fractures moved inward. Big Sam, one of the original members of the East Side Boys, eventually spoke publicly about why the group disbanded. And what he described was not creative differences. It was financial tension. According to him, the breakdown began when he started asking direct questions about money, about royalties, about mechanicals, about record sales revenue. The moment those questions surfaced, he said, the atmosphere changed. That shift is rarely loud at first. It is subtle. Conversations become shorter. Meetings feel colder. The energy adjusts. After Crunk Juice in 2004, Lil Jon parted ways with Big Sam and Lil Bo. Officially, it was framed around financial disagreements and the broader chaos surrounding TVT. But from Big Sam's perspective, the issue centered on transparency. He wanted clarity about earnings. He wanted to understand where the numbers were going. Once that conversation started, the unity of the group fractured. That question, where is my money, has ended more music partnerships than creative differences ever could. And the tension did not stop within the group. Memphis artists began publicly challenging Lil Jon's narrative about the origins of crunk. DJ Paul of 3-6 Mafia openly addressed the debate, insisting that Memphis pioneers laid the groundwork for the sound before Atlanta popularized it. Gangsta Pat responded to Lil Jon's comments about Memphis in a video, emphasizing that Buck music predated what later became known as crunk. These were not private disagreements. They were public corrections. Then even within Atlanta, accusations surfaced. The Dem franchise boys claimed that elements of their snap sound were being absorbed into Lil Jon's production during the mid-2000s without proper credit. In a genre built on innovation and recognition, credit matters, and perceived appropriation can linger. When you step back and examine the pattern, the list grows. A label conflict that turned into bankruptcy. former group members alleging financial mistreatment. Memphis artists disputing creative origins. Local Atlanta artists questioning stylistic borrowing. Each conflict may stand alone on paper, but together, they form a network of strained relationships. That network does not disappear just because albums go platinum. Resentment does not expire quietly. And Lil Jon understood pressure. He has spoken about the darker side of fame in ways that many fans never fully processed. The isolation, the emotional toll, the paranoia that can accompany success. From the outside, the lifestyle looks untouchable. Private jets, international tours, stadium stages. But inside that environment, there is another reality. Isolation grows when trust becomes complicated. Pressure builds when expectations never decrease. Visibility increases, but privacy disappears. That is the atmosphere he operated within for years. So when you consider everything surrounding his son's sudden disappearance and death, context becomes unavoidable. This is not simply the story of a grieving father. It is the story of a man who built an empire while navigating business betrayal, creative disputes, and public challenges to his legacy. And when a life connected to that legacy ends under unusual circumstances, people start revisiting old tensions. Because in this industry, history rarely stays in the past. Most people would not be able to carry what Lil Jon has carried over the years. The business disputes, the public arguments, the accusations about money, the fights over credit, the scrutiny that follows long-term success. That alone would weigh heavily on anyone. And then, on top of all of it, he had to bury his firstborn son. No parent is built for that moment. No amount of experience prepares you for it. And while the questions surrounding Nathan's death continued to circulate quietly, something unexpected began to unfold. The same industry that once debated him, the same artists who challenged his narrative, the same peers who had clashed with him over business and creative disputes. They stopped. Every one of them. The noise paused. The arguments went silent. Whatever tension had existed was suspended. And in its place, there was only grief. That shift was not subtle. The hip-hop community rallied around Lil Jon in a way that cut through years of division. Public messages began to surface, not competitive, not political, personal. People who had once stood on opposite sides of disputes suddenly shared a unified message. We are sorry. We are here for you. Your son did not deserve this. The tone changed completely. It was not about history anymore. It was about humanity. One of the first to speak was E40, a Bay Area icon, a figure from an entirely different region, where pride in city and sound often shapes alliances. In hip-hop, geography matters. It defines loyalty. But in this moment, none of that carried weight. E40's response was described as deeply emotional. When he spoke about Nathan, the grief was audible. He did not speak as a distant colleague. He referred to Nathan as his nephew. That language is intentional. That is not casual phrasing. He made it clear that Nathan was family to him. He had recently been with the entire family. They had been together just months earlier on Family Feud, laughing, competing, sharing space in a way that felt light and ordinary. And now, that memory carried a different gravity. E40 stood before cameras attempting to steady himself while expressing how much he would miss Nathan. The message was simple, but heavy. Anything you need, I am here. That is not performance, that is support, and it extended beyond music. Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most recognizable names in sports and entertainment, personally reached out. He did not limit his support to a public post. He called Lil Jon directly. That detail matters. In moments like this, a phone call carries more weight than a caption. Shaq was transparent. He admitted that he did not know what it felt like to lose a child, but he understood the devastation of the concept itself. For someone of his stature to speak that plainly, without pretending to relate to something he has not experienced, added sincerity to the gesture. Then there was Lil Jon's own statement. When he addressed the loss publicly, the language shifted away from titles and achievements. He did not describe Nathan as a DJ, not as a producer, not as an extension of his legacy. He described him as the kindest human being you would ever meet. That distinction reveals everything. A father speaking not about career, not about accomplishments, but about character. You could hear it in the tone. the fracture in his voice, the weight between the words. It was not polished. It was not strategic. It was grief. And when a community that once debated you stands unified in your pain, it signals something deeper than sympathy. It signals recognition. Recognition that beyond the arguments, beyond the business, beyond the disputes, there was always respect. But even with that unity, the unanswered questions did not disappear. Support can surround a tragedy. It cannot explain it. Nathan loved his family completely. That much is clear from every story shared, every photo posted, every memory described. And what makes this loss even more painful is what Lil Jon revealed next in his statement. He said, "In our last times together, we're comforted in knowing that we expressed that very sentiment to him." That line carries weight. It means they told each other what mattered. They did not leave it unsaid. They did not assume there would always be more time. Not every family gets that chance. On Instagram, Lil Jon posted a video montage of Nathan's life, from childhood moments to adulthood milestones. The caption was simple and direct. "This hurts so bad and I love you, son." There was no branding, no performance, just grief. The post received an overwhelming wave of support from across the industry and beyond. The comment section became a wall of condolences, prayer hands, broken hearts, and long messages from artists and fans alike. In another post, Lil Jon drew attention to Nathan's music. He highlighted his Spotify page and wrote, "Slade released this when he graduated from college. He was so happy to express his art and do it himself. I was so proud of him for doing it all on his own." Even in the middle of unimaginable pain, he made sure the world understood that his son's accomplishments were earned independently. That detail mattered to him. It was not about legacy. It was about effort. Across social media, the reaction spread quickly. On X, formerly Twitter, users described the loss as devastating not just for one family, but for hip-hop culture as a whole. On Instagram, the condolences kept coming. On TikTok, tribute videos surfaced within hours. Slideshows, old clips, music layered under childhood footage. The message repeated itself across every platform. "We are hurting with you." And in moments like that, old conflicts dissolve. Years of tension become irrelevant. Arguments lose meaning. People who once disagreed stand shoulder to shoulder in grief. That collective response says something important. It reveals the gravity of what happened. It shows that beyond rivalry and debate, there was always recognition of the man and his family. But even as support surrounded him, something else remained. Unanswered questions. The official statement from authorities has not changed. There is no indication of foul play. At the same time, the Milton Police Department Criminal Investigations Division continues to treat the case as open and active. That language sits in tension with itself. No foul play, but not closed. So consider what is publicly known. A 27-year-old man with no widely reported history of serious issues leaves his home around 6 in the morning. No phone, no wallet, no shoes, no keys. Officials stated he may have been disoriented and in need of assistance. Multiple agencies searched for 3 full days. Nothing. Then on the 3rd day, he was found in a pond near his own residence. That timeline is simple on paper. But simplicity does not always equal clarity. Some sources mentioned that Nathan had been treated for a viral infection or rash shortly before his disappearance. Beyond that brief reference, no detailed medical information has been released. No autopsy findings have been made public. No toxicology results have been disclosed as of February 10, 2026. When official details remain limited, speculation grows quietly. Not because people want drama, but because gaps invite interpretation. An open investigation suggests unresolved elements. And unresolved elements prevent closure. That is where the story stands. A grieving father. A community unified in support. An official statement that says no foul play, yet keeps the case active. And a series of missing details that continue to linger beneath the surface. No official cause of death. No official manner of death. No medical breakdown made public. Nothing conclusive placed before the public record. Just silence. And that silence is what continues to weigh heavily on everyone following this case. Because behind every unanswered question is a family trying to make sense of a loss that arrived without warning. A father lost his son. A mother lost her firstborn. And beyond the headlines, beyond the statements, there is a younger sister, Nahara, born in 2024, who will now grow up without her big brother. That detail does not trend online, but it matters. It is the part that lingers inside the house long after cameras move on. The world is left asking what truly happened on the morning of February 3rd, 2026. A 27-year-old man leaves his home under unusual circumstances. 3 days later, he is found in a pond near where he lived. The case remains open. The official language stays measured. But clarity has not arrived, and until it does, the absence of answers will continue to shape how this story is remembered. What we do know is clear. Nathan was loved, deeply. He was talented. He was disciplined enough to pursue formal training. He was passionate about his craft, building a resume step by step. He was carving out an identity separate from his father's legacy while still honoring it. He was described as kind, as independent, as someone who did the work himself. That is not a narrative constructed after loss. It is consistent with the path he was already walking. He was building a future that would have made any parent proud. That momentum was real, and then it stopped. Whatever the complete truth behind that morning turns out to be, one fact remains unchanged. The world lost a young man with potential still unfolding, and Lil Jon lost his firstborn son. There are losses that reshape careers, and then there are losses that reshape a life entirely. Rest in peace, DJ Young Slade, Nathan Smith. 1998 to 2026. Gone far too soon. This is not just a headline. It is a reminder of how quickly everything can shift. Streetwears will continue to follow this story closely as more verified details emerge, because some questions deserve full clarity. And when that clarity arrives, it will matter.